And we should be discussing what that means at this particular point in time. The second part of that, Premier, would be a Treaty Relationships Intergovernmental Roundtable. That not being just the quarterly meetings, but let me break that down into 4 areas. The first one would be a very specific strategy on the treaty relationship. The second part being a terms of reference for that roundtable process. The third part being the set of objectives that we would look at on a quarterly basis, as well, finally, an investment. I think at this particular point in time, we know that there's been certain pods of activity. We see the 5 major cities, they've got their process. I really believe it's time, Premier, to put some money to where the interest and the talk has been. And let's have the treaty relationship discussion. And I think, Premier, if we can do that, I think we're going to help this process move along a lot more expeditiously.
Thank you, Chief Dean Miigwech. So let me just make a couple of comments. First of all, I apologize when if I omitted First Nations. I was trying very hard to say all orders of government, and by that I mean First Nation, I mean yes. Provincial, I mean federal. So when I said government to government to government, that's what I was talking about. So I appreciate that. The second thing I want to say is that I have, and you and I have been in many meetings when I was Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, and I have a strong belief that the treaty relationship is badly understood by the general population in this province, and in fact has been badly understood by previous governments, and we are working very hard, specifically on some very specific projects to use, and I think Minister Murray spoke to this earlier today, to use the treaty relationship as the foundation for the discussion. I would suggest that the discussions that we've had around education that UOI and the governments have had, my hope is that you feel that the treaty relationship has been expressed at those tables. And so what I want to say is that it's very important to me that we behave in that way, that's the way we do business with each other. And I hope that you will continue to work with us on how we can do that in other specific instances. I believe the Highway 69 discussion that's going on is an example of the kind of work that we should do together. And at the same time, you've suggested a couple of specific mechanisms, and I'm not going to commit today to specific tables or specific processes, but I do believe that we have work to do together to allow the historical nature of our relationship to be better understood among ourselves and the broader population. The last thing I will say is that I believe that it is critical that children who are in our schools, all of our schools, but I'm going to speak for the provincial schools, the children in our provincial schools have a better understanding of our history. I do not believe that our shared history has been taught in a way that recognizes the treaty relationship, that we are all a treaty people. I don't think that our education has acknowledged that, has recognized that. And so for me, that's a fundamental change that needs to happen in education in Ontario. So I would love to have the opportunity to work with you on some of those changes.
Yes, thank you, Premier, and I will again reiterate, and I feel it's very, very imperative to get the point across here. There's some very stark issues that bear consideration from the First Nation perspective. The fact that you're standing in front of 2 flags, the provincial and the federal government flags. There really are some serious issues with respect to the legal orientation of these types of processes. The growth plan is actually established out of the Places to Grow legislation. Now let's start talking Section 35 here for a second. If we get into that discussion and debate as to the legitimacy, the legal legitimacy of all levels of development, we're going to be here and we're going to have some serious discussions. We're going to have some serious concerns, and there will be some conflicts that come out of that discussion. Now, Premier,
So my objective would be for us to find a way, and you know, you and I have sat in meetings, and I have said clearly, I want us to make progress together, and we can find conflict. We can find ways to be in conflict, but my hope is that we're going to be able to do something different than that, as we have on the education discussions and as we have in some of these other instances. So we need to have a collaborative process on
Granted, Premier, and what I brought here today is a very simple formula and proposal, and I definitely am going to be pushing that, and I will be rather vocal if we don't get any movement on that sort of a process, respectfully, because without it, we're not going to move.
So let's find a way to work on the principles of what you're bringing forward.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Canfield.